Tyrants, Tormentors, and the Tiara Chapter 4. Roria was the second oldest city in Arba and the most poorly designed. The streets were small and cramped. Numerous alleyways intersected the tangle of crisscrossing avenues to form a web of random passages even natives struggled to navigate. The architectural nightmare played well into the hands of the criminal element and allowed the neater city of Reyesburg, once Clement's capital, to dominate trade on the continent. Still, Sylvia chose Roria as her capital, and the town remained the center of magical study and military might. Clement was thankful for her decision. Escaping unseen through the streets of Reyesburg would be virtually impossible, but with Lillian's help, they managed to maneuver unseen through Roria's maze of avenues and back roads. Apparently, the guards concluded Darian and Clement had already escaped. As time passed, the number of search parties dwindled to only a few patrols. The hour was well past midnight. Lights in most houses and street lamps were burnt out, and a powerful snowstorm sweeping through the city aided the covert journey. The biggest challenge remained escaping through the outer wall without being spotted by watchmen. The stone fortifications stood over 15 feet high, and sentries patrolled every few yards. Still, Lillian assured her companions she could get them out with minimal fuss. Darian wrapped his cloak tightly around himself, and Lillian muttered quietly. Clement suspected she was uttering warming spells, protecting herself from the cold. After hours of walking, they reached the outer wall. Lillian directed them toward the nearest gate. Before they took 4 steps, Darian stopped. The enchanter stared behind them, his eyes fixed on a strange shape moving through the hazy darkness. Observing Darian's bizarre behavior, Lillian and Clement stopped as well. Following his gaze, they discerned the form of an old woman. She hobbled toward them. Her body was bent low over a rickety wooden cane as she slowly and seemingly painfully limped their direction. She wore a thick black woolen cloak with a hood pulled over her head, shielding her aged frame from the freezing winds. Beneath the hood, they saw the ancient face of a weathered wanderer. Her skin was wrinkled and cracked from too many days spent in bad weather. Her ancient lips formed a crinkled scowl, curving inward as though lacking teeth. The most notable feature, though, remained her eyes. The milky balls shone bright in the wintry sky, clear and unseeing. She was blind, but she stared ahead at where they stood. In her left hand, she held a begging cup, indicating a wordless plea for alms. Darian stared at her, hatred and contempt slicing a path across his normally placid face. Lillian looked bewildered. Clement couldn't blame her. Roria boasted a population of more than 3,000 citizens. Beggars weren't uncommon. Some elderly transient spotting the company was inconsequential, a blind beggar even more so. But Darian stood rooted to the spot, glowering at the aged vagabond. Waves of intense loathing radiated from his body like a venomous ooze. Clement's surprise turned to irritation. He didn't understand Darian's aggressive stance toward the woman. Whatever the cause, the delay was slowing their progress. If the enchanter wanted to kill the old hag, he needed to do so. At the very least, they couldn't afford to linger any longer. "Darian," Clement began. Before he could get any further, his companion cut him off. The enchanter started shouting in the quiet night air. "I know who you are, witch," he declared. "Your disguise does not fool me. What do you want?" The woman stopped in her tracks. The milky white eyes shimmered, revealing 2 round black pupils. The ebony orbs stared straight at them. The lips of the wrinkled face curled upward into an evil, toothless grin. The stranger clearly knew who they were and didn't fear them. The begging cup in her hand vanished in a small wisp of swirling blue smoke. The now empty hand gestured toward a blank wall to her left. Responding to the motion, the bricks started shifting. A doorway manifested in the middle of the formerly blank facade, casting warm streaks of bright firelight through the opening. With a flick of her wrist, the begging cup reappeared in her wrinkled hand. The black-cloaked stranger stood motionless, waiting for them. Lillian hesitated. Clement glanced at Darian. The enchanter ignored them both, not taking his eyes off the mysterious woman. Striding across the building's snow, he headed toward her. Exchanging a quick look, Lillian and Clement followed.
"Darian,"
Clement said, catching up to him.
"what in the world?"
"Xanathia," Darian said, the name escaping his lips in a hiss. Stunned, Clement slowed his pace. Xanathia was a name he knew only too well. The sorceress was the first of the 4 tyrants to forge her kingdom, and also the first to fall. Xanathia forged an empire easily as large and as powerful as either Darian or Clement. She was a master of necromancy, arguably the greatest expert in death magic to live in the modern age. Armed with hordes of monstrous undead abominations, the Dark Queen of Suffering marched armies across the land with unrestrained brutality. Clement vividly remembered many bloody battles fought against the merciless foe. Clement always felt glad her kingdom shared a larger border with Darian. The conflict between Darian and Xanathia was legendary. They often led armies against each other. Minstrels across the land still sang ballads about their duels. Sources claimed Darian feared Xanathia more than Clement and Lillian combined. The necromancer awaited the arrival of the company. Once Darian approached within a dozen yards, she stepped into the doorway, disappearing from sight. Darian followed, but Lillian didn't. Her eyes wide with curiosity, she paused to examine the doorway.
"What a unique spell," Clement heard her muttering to herself. "This could be useful to me. How to strip the secret from her."
"That," Clement sneered, "requires a combination of brains, which you lack, and brawn, of which you have even less. You might do better to steal them from Sylvia. I hear she thoroughly looted Xanathia's library after her victory."
"I didn't think there was much left of her library after your arsonists burned down the building," Lillian said, straightening up.
"She managed to salvage some of her materials," he said, "although she was pretty upset. Serves her right, though, after she transformed so many of my apprentices and mistresses into undead monstrosities, still alive and screaming during the ritual."
"Any woman who sleeps with you deserves a horrific death," Lillian responded. "Besides, I suppose it was just coincidence that the spell for unquenchable fire you used on her library was later used by her on my palace."
"Ah, yes," he sighed. "It was one of the happiest days of my young life."
With those words, he strode through the portal without looking to see her reaction. He found himself standing in a small room with bright flames issuing from a large fire pit in the middle of the floor. The walls were completely blank. A small wooden table sat in the far corner with several loaves of sourdough bread and a few canteens resting on top. He could see the old woman standing beside the fire opposite the doorway. Directly across from her stood Darian. They glared so intently at each other, neither noticed Clement's entrance. This pleased him, and trying to remain insignificant, he quietly took a seat about 90 degrees to Darian's right. Lillian entered the room shortly thereafter. She lingered momentarily, appraising the situation. Noting where everyone stood, she crossed the room, taking a spot opposite the fire from Clement. Lillian reclined against the wall. Placing her hands behind her head, she stretched her legs, looking perfectly at ease. Her casual manner caught the notice of Xenophia. Taking her eyes off Darian, the necromancer scowled at Lillian before turning to Clement. She scrutinized him, giving a short, derisive snort, before returning her attention to Darian. The entryway dissolved, replaced by a thick brick wall. Standing before the assembly, the old woman reached up. With a flourish, she yanked off her cloak. As it whisked off her body, her image grew blurry. When the haze cleared, the old woman was gone. In her place, a woman in her upper 30s stood towering above the company. She was incredibly tall, even taller than Darian, with a strange, unnatural beauty more unnerving than attractive. She possessed smooth, flawless skin, yet the skin possessed an unnatural shade of white, as pale as the snow falling outside, and had a waxy appearance. She possessed deep, penetrating eyes, but the pupils of the eyes were pure black, lacking irises, and bright red veins stretched across the outsides. Her dark, black hair hung long, but the dark strands swayed with their own life, as though agitated by hot steams rising from a furnace. Her thin, black lips stood in stark contrast to her white skin, adding to the ominous appearance. Clement, who had never seen Xenophia before, was caught off guard by the transformation. Although he tried to hide his surprise, Xenophia noticed the flicker of astonishment. Glancing at him, she gave a small, self-satisfied smirk. Lillian, reclining on the floor, seemed amused by the change. She apparently possessed enough agents in the witch's kingdom to have a solid knowledge of her enemy's true appearance. Darian, who knew Xenophia well, was unfazed by the alteration. Staring at his enemy's true form, Clement saw Darian's anger swell. Standing before him was the one person Darian hated more than any other. Xenophia and he had apprenticed together under the same master at the Rorian Academy. They initially became friendly rivals, competing for the praise and attention of their mentor. It wasn't long, however, before the competition escalated into all-out war. Xenophia transformed Darian's familiar and pet cat into an undead zombie. Darian responded by poisoning Xenophia's food. The healers saved her life, but the concoction altered her body forever. The chemicals turned her skin a pale wintry white and distorted her eyes to be forever black. Afterward, she created the magical cloak, concealing her true appearance. After their master broke up the fighting, the rivals ignored each other for the next 2 years. Then Xenophia approached Darian. She apologized to him, suggesting they forget the past and start over. For a while, they became very close. Many in the school commented with surprise on the newfound friendship, which soon blossomed into romance. Still, Darian never completely trusted her, and his suspicions proved correct. One night, Xenophia seduced him, lured him into bed, and attempted to kill him. Only a combination of quick reflexes and quick thinking saved his life. Alarmed by the sounds of battle, their teacher came to investigate. Hearing the master coming, Xenophia stopped her attack. Darian didn't. In his rage, he fired a powerful killing spell at her back. Xenophia sensed the danger and dove out of the way. The spell rebounded off a wall, striking the aged teacher, killing him instantly. Hearing the footsteps of other students and teachers coming, Darian leapt from his tower window, using his magic to soften the landing. With no clothes and only a few possessions, he fled the city. Fearing blame for her instructor's death, Xenophia also fled. The two never returned to the academy, and both blamed the other for their teacher's death. Xenophia blamed Darian for casting the spell. Darian blamed Xenophia for starting the fight.
Well, I see we are all together now,
Xenophia said.
kind of like a family gathering, don't you think? Maybe,
Clement agreed.
if your family consists of a bunch of psychopathic killers who would just as soon murder each other as look at each other.
Do not rule out the possibility, Darian said. Such an upbringing might explain how she grew up to become a monster. Lillian gave a laugh, and Xenophia sneered at her.
Why are you laughing? Your family is the epitome of Clement's description. By the way, I heard they took down the statue of your mother. You know, the life-sized one which mysteriously appeared in the middle of town after she accused you of murdering your father?
Lillian shrugged with indifference.
I told her to keep her mouth shut. She said, make me. So I did.
Clement looked at Lillian.
I thought her mouth was open in the statue.
Yes, well,
Lillian replied.
the spell took longer to cast than planned. Some things are all about timing.
Anyway, Darian interrupted. What do you want, Zaina? Clement's eyes widened in surprise at hearing Darian use a nickname. Lillian, too, looked astonished at Darian's audacity. Xenophia clearly disliked being addressed in such a manner. Her eyes flashed, and her pale skin flushed with rage.
Where is she?
Xenophia hissed at Darian through gritted teeth. Where is who? Darian retorted.
Don't play coy with me. The word is out all over the castle. You kidnapped Sylvia. I want to know where she is.
Why?
Because I didn't come all the way up here just to be robbed of my vengeance by you scum,
Xenophia declared angrily, her hair whipping as though caught in a typhoon.
Wait,
Clement said.
You came to Roria tonight with the intention of getting revenge against Sylvia too? Yes, she snapped. Unlike you three, I plotted revenge on my own.
Please, said Lillian, like I would plot my revenge with these buffoons. I came here on my own, too.
Wow, the stars really aligned against Sylvia tonight, Darian observed. 4 separate plots launched on the same day within mere hours of each other.
Wait a minute,
Xenophia said.
Are you telling me each of you arrived independently to launch an attack against Sylvia on the same night? No,
Clement responded.
Darian and I came together. So, one plot by me, one by Lillian, and one by the men,
Xenophia said ruefully.
I suppose the 4th plot will answer my question concerning Sylvia's whereabouts?
Perhaps, Darian shrugged. But why should we tell you? Even if we know where she is, what makes you think you can get to her? And if you do, what could you hope to accomplish?
I agree,
Clement voiced.
Darian and I recognized our limitations. We worked together. Lillian recognized her limitations and tried to reach Sylvia in her sleep. But you don't have Lillian's stealth, and you appear to be working alone. What do you hope to achieve when you find her? My plans are none of your business,
Xenophia spat.
Sylvia's whereabouts are none of yours,
Lillian retorted.
What do we care if you get your revenge? We have enough troubles trying to carry out our own vendettas without worrying about yours.
Xenophia glared at Lillian. With a quick, angry gesture, she reached for the shining blue handle of a dagger sheathed on her right hip. Yanking the weapon from the holster, she held the dazzling turquoise and red stone blade into the firelight. She pointed the weapon directly at Lillian, who scrambled backward in alarm. The knife was only about a foot long and extremely thin. It looked both fragile and deadly. Clement leapt backward in alarm. Darian's eyes narrowed. Wide-eyed, Lillian stared transfixed at the razor-sharp tip.
Is that a violet quartz crystal dagger?
Lillian spoke, her voice filled with a mix of shock and awe.
Yes,
Lillian said.
I intend to use the weapon on Sylvia, yet I can satisfy myself with employing it on one of you." "You can try," Clement responded. "Do you really think we're going to let you cast the absorption spell? We'd kill you the moment you started casting."
"She does not need to cast any spell," Darian said. "The dagger is enchanted. All she has to do is stab her enemy. The spell activates immediately."
Incredible, Lillian marveled. Have you spent the last 7 years in exile making this one deadly trinket?
"No," Darian interrupted again. "She stole it from Sylvia's treasury."
"How do you know?"
Clement asked. "Because," Darian answered, "Sylvia took possession of the dagger after defeating me. It is mine."
"No!"
Xenophia screamed furiously.
"It's mine! I made it!"
She was livid. Her eyes flashed. Lillian smiled, backing away, happy to no longer be the focus of the dagger's attention. "And I killed the assassin you sent to use it against me," Darian shouted back. "To the victor go the spoils. My name is even carved on the blade."
"Regardless," she responded, "the dagger is mine. I regained possession. I am the victor now."
You broke into Sylvia's treasury and stole the dagger? Lillian asked. How did you pull that off?
"I may not be the cowardly master of stealth magic," Xenophia said, "but I don't need to turn invisible to access forbidden places."
Waving her hand, she summoned her cloak off the floor. The robe wrapped itself around her. A moment later, Sylvia stood before the company, wearing a hooded nightgown. Lillian scrutinized the Queen's doppelganger.
You don't have her tiara.
"You don't have her tiara,"
Xenophia mocked, resuming her true appearance.
"Who cares? The guards didn't. The fools deserved the death they received." "If your disguise was so good," said Clement, "why'd you kill them?" "Because a bunch of idiots caused the alarm to go off. I was about to leave and head to her room when the wailing started. The guards realized something was amiss and attempted to waylay me. Their remains will never be found." "So," Clement continued, "you stole the dagger, planning to kill Sylvia. Not much different than our own plan."
"Except we are going to destroy the orb," Darian interjected. "She wants to actually steal Sylvia's magic for her own."
"Really?" Clement said with obvious amusement. "Shame she didn't succeed. I'd love to see her blow herself up."
Yeah, Lillian smirked. No one has ever succeeded. What makes you think you will?
"She has already succeeded," Darian answered. Clement and Lillian both gazed at him in shock. Xenophia gave a smug smile. Suddenly, everything made sense to Clement. Darian mentioned knowing one person who succeeded in absorbing powers from a violet quartz crystal. He was referring to Xenophia. Further, Clement knew why Darian was so adamant about destroying the orb. He wasn't worried about Clement taking Sylvia's power. He wanted to make sure the person he hated the most in the world, Xenophia, didn't get them.
"There," Xenophia said. "You know my story. Now where is she?"
"Ha!" Darian snorted. "I do not fear you. Do you think I am going to let you steal Sylvia's power over my dead body?"
"Okay,"
Xenophia said, raising the dagger.
"I'm fine with that arrangement."
"Wait," Clement interrupted, holding out his hands. "Stop, both of you." They turned to face Clement, their eyes blazing.
"Look, Darian, we're a long way from worrying about her stealing Sylvia's power. If we don't hurry, Sylvia won't have any power left to steal. If that happens, she can use her dagger on whoever she wants. Doing so won't save her." "Save me from what?"
Xenophia asked. Lillian, Clement, and Darian exchanged glances. They only confided in each other because each possessed information necessary to solve the puzzle surrounding Sylvia's disappearance. Xenophia brought no such information to the table. Clement felt unsure what information to reveal and what not to. He decided to keep the details vague.
"Before we reached Sylvia's room," Clement began, "Sylvia was kidnapped. Lillian watched the battle from the balcony."
Why did none of the guards see the kidnappers? Xenophia asked. How'd they kidnap her? She must have put up a fight. She tried, Lillian said, but fight is not the right term. Massacre makes more sense. The enemy beat her swiftly and thoroughly.
Xenophia appeared to blanch, although her skin was so white already, one could hardly tell.
They wanted her tiara, Lillian continued. The tiara greatly enhances the magical powers of the wearer.
How do you know?
Xenophia asked.
Research,
Lillian responded.
In any case, someone else found out too.
Who?
Xenophia demanded.
A group of cultists, Clement said. They operate out of a small fortress in the Blood-Fang Mountains.
These two morons are going after them, Lillian said, and I'm tagging along to watch them die. Oh, I'm also going to destroy the tiara.
Clement rolled his eyes, but Xenophia seemed interested.
Excellent, she said. I will come too.
No, you will not, Darian shouted.
Try to stop me,
Xenophia retorted.
If you think you can kill me, then do so. If not, you can't stop me from following. But why do you want to come at all?
Clement asked. He was getting frustrated. The group seemed to be growing at an exponential rate.
I traveled for weeks on a mission to kill Sylvia,
Xenophia said.
I'm not stopping just because someone arrived first. Plus, I don't want to see Sylvia's powers in the hand of some unknown threat. I don't trust the feeble powers of you three weaklings to end the danger.
Darian glared, but said nothing. Lillian appeared lost for words. Clement just gave a defeated laugh. He never imagined his quest for vengeance resulting in a long, perilous mission with 3 of the 4 people he hated most in the world.
Well,
Lillian said, finding her voice,
that's all fine and dandy, but we're about to embark on a week-long trek. At some point, we'll need sleep. Is there really anyone here willing to sleep within a mile of each other?
The 4 companions eyed one another suspiciously. The long silence left no doubt regarding the answer. I am certainly not going to sleep anywhere near her, Darian said, pointing at Xenophia.
Her? Clement exclaimed. Lillian is the one who kills people in their sleep.
All right,
Xenophia said.
Why don't we just take a blood oath or something? No, Clement snapped. A 4-person blood oath will take days to cast.
Fine,
the necromancer replied.
I'm guessing we've all trained our minds and bodies to survive on little sleep. Therefore, we'll sleep in 4-hour segments. During the first 4 hours, Lillian and Clement will keep watch to make sure they and we don't kill each other. During the next 4 hours, Darian and I will keep watch on each other. How is that?
Darian, Lillian, and Clement looked at each other again. Finally, they broke eye contact, giving small shrugs. Xenophia seemed determined to come with them, and they were determined to continue with each other. No one liked the alliance, but each recognized the usefulness of the other being at their disposal. All right, Darian said, but we need to get moving. It is getting late. We would do well to be out of town before light.
No need,
Xenophia said. My magic will stay intact as long as we're inside. No one can enter without my permission. Further, we don't want to be caught sleeping or resting outside of town. The palace dispatched a number of heavily armed and magically trained search parties. They're hunting for you. How do you know that?
Lillian asked.
The same way I knew Clement and Darian set off the alarm. I disguised myself as a guard and investigated. I heard Generals Gahira, Corridor, and Cornelius discussing the rescue plan.
Okay, Clement said, but if we rest here, how will we get out of town?
Xenophia smiled.
The wall we're in is part of the outer battlements, and I control where the doors appear.
She waved her hand. A door appeared on the opposite wall from where they entered. Looking through, they saw the thick trees and forested wilderness surrounding Roria. The snow still fell, accumulating upon the thick brambles lining the outer wall. Xenophia waved her hand, and the doorway disappeared.
Well then, Lillian said, looks like we're camping in here for the night. In the morning, we depart for the Bloodfangs.
With these words, Lillian rolled onto her side. She closed her eyes, muttering self-defense spells before falling asleep. Her companions stared down at her.
Well then,
Clement said, performing a mocking imitation of Lillian's voice.
I guess you two have first watch. Good night.
Clement lay down on the floor. Following Lillian's lead, he conjured a few defensive enchantments of his own. The day had not gone the way he hoped. Not only was he unable to destroy Sylvia, but now he was stuck with these scoundrels for the next week. With these unhappy thoughts, he slowly drifted into an uneasy slumber.